welcome to everyone who's tuning in at home. Welcome to Andrew and Tom, our guests in Kent and Westminster respectively. We are live, so anything can happen. Please bear with us. Hopefully the gods of the internet will shine upon us, but who knows. Please, if you hear something that you like, or something you got a question on, please drop us a question in the chat panel. There's some buttons down here that you can use to do that. I thought I would just start by saying, if you have come here looking for doom and gloom, you have come to the wrong place. This is an unapologetically upbeat and hopeful session in which we will be talking about ways in which we can all help. We can all help with the current crisis. I think the one thing that unites all speakers and everyone who's tuning in is that we all were at one point political activists. Well, politics doesn't exist anymore. So now we are just activists, and I'm sure we're all looking for ways in which we can help. I'm very, very glad that we're joined by Andrew and Tom, because we all got a very different perspective and experience of what's happened thus far. Myself, I am fully working from home with young children, which brings its own challenges. And I have several family members on the front line working in the NHS. Tom is, of course, newly elected Member of Parliament for Ipswich. God, December feels like a long time ago now, doesn't it? And he is involved in all things governmental and parliamentarian at that national level. And Andrew, of course, his husband is a key worker and is also a local councillor. So we all have very different experiences. Making another appearance is, of course, my disastrous attempt at a lockdown beard, which hasn't gone particularly well, but there we are. And of course, not on screen but present is my glamorous online invisible assistant, Alan, who will be shouting directions to me throughout this via the medium of WhatsApp. This is Zoom, so as chairman, I have power to mute. Not even Andrew Marr has that particular power on his shows, but I'm sure he'd like it. So I think I'd like to start with the question that's on everyone's lips. Guys, are you wearing trousers? A question to Tom first.
I am, yeah.
He's not proving it. Fine. Tom, how are you doing? What's been keeping you busy, and how have you been helping people in your constituency?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I've just been, the sort of amount of correspondence I've been receiving has slowed down recently, actually. But when initially it sort of coronavirus broke out, and when the lockdown was initially introduced, and when a lot of the initial announcements were made by government, I, like many other MPs, received huge amounts of correspondence from people, and it was different sort of casework than the kind of casework MPs usually get. In sort of peacetime, where in ordinary times, just, you get a lot of casework, and there's some serious casework in there, but sometimes it's not necessarily huge issues. Whereas there is a period of time, a few weeks, where really we've been an MP for a couple of months, still getting used to it. It's just starting to calm down, just beginning to think you got your head around it. And then this started up, and you had people getting in touch with me, business people, people stuck abroad wanting to get back with their loved ones, people who previously successful businesses on not knowing whether or not they're going to be able to continue, key workers with children, having a bit of a dispute with the school about whether or not the child should be at the school or not. Lots of different issues going on. People with mental health issues who are really struggling at the moment with self-isolation. So yeah, really meaningful casework, actually, and it's been it's been really what my focus has been, dealing with that casework, getting back to people as soon as possible, liaising with the Ipswich Hospital, having regular catch-ups with the Chief Executive, making sure that they've got everything they need from government, and also talking with the local Police and Crime Commissioner, Chief Constable. I've had lots of people contacting me, concerns about social distancing not being followed, etc. So my key thing has been the things that only I can do as a member of parliament, which are, which is liaising with government, raising concerns of constituents. I have set up a service called Talking with Tom, which is focused at those who are self-isolating and may feel lonely. And I've worked with Age UK Suffolk with that. And they've advertised it, I've advertised it. I have also written to every person over the age of 70 in Ipswich. I've written a letter to them, signed, top and tailed it. And I think so far I've spoken to 70 people through Talking with Tom, but hopefully now these letters have gone out, we'll get into the hundreds. And I have to say, I really enjoy it because it's, and they sort of say, thank you for talking to me. I'm like, well, no, thank you. Because, I'm also, at one point, because I was self-isolating for a week and I was sort of stuck inside. So actually they were keeping me company as well. But then, I've also written to all the landlords, all the hairdressers, all the charities in the area, just constantly let them know that I'm there to support them in any way possible. And this morning I was on the phone with the local coordinator for Volunteering Matters about some parts of town. There's some parts of town where we've got lots of volunteers, other parts of town where we've had not so many volunteers. So today I spoke with him about how I can use my connections in that part of town to help promote what he's looking to do to try and get some more volunteers there as well. So it's calmed down slightly though. I'm not getting quite as much correspondence now as I was a few weeks ago. I think a lot of people have been, it's often been the case, people have contacted me with a big problem and within a few days it's been solved. Like for example, people contacted me who were self-employed. There's no help for self-employed when there was, and most of them got support there, but not all of them. And obviously next week we're going to be back in Parliament, and it's going to be sort of virtual Parliament. I think most of it's going to be virtual. So I've been drawn for 2 oral questions next week, Attorney General and MOJ questions, and they're going to be by video link. So I don't know how that's going to go down. I'm actually going to be asking a question about we've had some appalling instances in Suffolk where we've had people who've been arrested who've deliberately sort of spat on and coughed on the police to try and deliberately spread the coronavirus. So one of the questions I'm going to be raising next week is going to be, just making absolutely sure that we come down incredibly hard on those individuals. And because what we're talking about here is, spitting and deliberately coughing on a police officer is disgusting at the best of times. But right now, the consequences for society are incredibly serious because, potentially this is not just a police officer in question who could catch coronavirus, but actually a number of police colleagues. And before you know it, if there isn't a sufficient deterrent in place, and this sort of thing happens quite often, it could actually seriously deplete the local police force, which has consequences for all of us. So, I'd almost believe that anyone who does that, is caught doing that, should spend at least a small spell inside, actually. And I think we need to make a real example of these individuals. I mean, it's disgusting behaviour.
Extraordinary, yeah. The mind boggles, doesn't it? It's extraordinary, but I think we're seeing, as is very often said, we're seeing the best and the worst of people at the moment. Andrew, what projects have you been involved with in Kent to help people in your community?
Thanks, Tom. Well, I have the good fortune of representing, as a councillor, 5 very rural communities spread across the North Downs area of outstanding natural beauty. And what I've seen is, in the last 5 weeks, is people defining David Cameron's big society. The government spent 10 years trying to decide what this big society was. It took about 10 hours for people to show what it was. And I'm incredibly proud of the communities I represent, how they've come together organically from the bottom up. Nobody told them, nobody asked them, nobody paid them. These are concerned, well-meaning, caring local people. And what I've seen is every village do its own thing. And it's varied from village to village, from community to community. One size never fits all. The worst thing that could happen is a top-down solution for community activism and engagement. And we varied. I mean, in one village I represent, we've seen a very structured organisation of street captains, people on the phones offering befriending and counselling service for the lonely and the anxious. a rota of people collecting prescriptions, doing shopping. In another community, they've delivered leaflets to every house, and they have grocery collection by phone and internet. A third community have each fit and active person has taken responsibility for 10 older people. And what I've tried to do in all of this is act as the facilitator, because what we have now in local government is a plan for everything. You know, every council has a local plan. If your borough has a river, you have a flood plan. We have an economic development plan. We have an infrastructure plan. Parish councils have a parish plan. And even now, every branch of local government has a climate offset plan. What we haven't got is a community resilience plan. So there's been no proper planning for something like this in terms of providing volunteers with the support they need. And that's where I've come in. So I spent most of the first week printing thousands and thousands of leaflets free of charge for people to deliver to their neighbours, posters to go in windows. And I worked with a local publican who had to close his restaurant. And I worked with him to set up a system where we provided a hot meal every day, 7 days a week, for people who were lonely and self-isolating and couldn't get out. Because what a lot of people forget in urban areas, or even in rural towns, there are shops nearby. For most of my communities, if you are 80 and you don't have a car or you're isolated, it's an hour, 2 bus rides and an hour to the local supermarket. And that becomes a new challenge to actually get people fed. So last week I delivered 180 meals to local people in my ward who are ill or can't leave their homes. And all of that is being paid for by money I'm raising from my friends, volunteers, and from the local parish council. So that's what we're doing here in Kent. And I think you're absolutely right, Tom. This crisis has brought out the worst of people, but in the overwhelming majority of cases, it's brought out the best of people. And as a councillor, just coming up to my first year as a councillor, I actually feel for the first time I am doing something of value rather than sitting in meetings voting on things that really don't make any difference to normal people. So that's the contribution I hope I'm making to the people who elect me.
Yeah, I mean, I from a public service point of view, in terms of the casework that I've been doing, I share that, and I feel as though, you know, it's been very difficult, and it's very sad that, you know, lots of the cases we're having to deal with. But I do actually genuinely feel over the last few weeks, my office we really have helped people in a major way, and we've sorted out some problems, and I do feel that at the moment as an MP. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I speak to a lot of my family members who are on the front line in hospitals or in GP practices. And I suppose that they're telling me, because obviously it's in a family context, that, you know, some of the things they're dealing with are very sad, but not one of them has uttered any word of complaint. And they want nothing more than just to dig in and help and do the job that they signed up for, which is absolutely fantastic. Also, I think my street has signed up to this COVID-19 mutual support group stuff. It's like Andrew was saying, it's a organic movement, but it's sort of created local self-organized chapters. And anytime any elderly person asks for help, they are overwhelmed with responses, which is also just absolutely fantastic. So if we can go to the chat. Obviously, we are not advocating any political or any party politics at this time. But I think an interesting question that I can see is someone has asked, how do you think politics will change in the next 12 months? Andrew, you are general sort of campaigning supremo. What's your view on that?
I think we are entering, and I hope we are entering, a period where people are nicer to each other and where community matters. There are good things in every crisis, and I'm actually finding that I'm enjoying not working 60 hours a week. And I think if we have some form of rebuilding of local community, where people actually started caring for their neighbours, that will have consequences for all of us in terms of how we interact with people. I think also it's demonstrating the value of councillors who are, of all parties, who are community activists and community champions, not bureaucrats and meeting dwellers. And of all political parties, actually spend a little bit more time finding people who will speak for their communities, then that will enhance politics as well. I think there's a longer term consequence of how we have perhaps, because of this crisis, developed a perhaps more Scandinavian approach to big government. And I think that's something that may change the medium and longer term political narrative. But the government has had no option but to do the right thing, and they're doing the right thing. But if this has brought forward people for any political party who cares for the community and sees their role as a champion of the community, then I think politics in general will benefit from that.
Absolutely. Tom, what do you think? How through your sort of particular view in Parliament, but also your sort of what you can see in Ipswich as well, generally?
I mean, I think it's I think what if one of the benefits, it'd be great if one of the benefits from this would be that that community activism, if that just even beyond this crisis, that was to stay with us, and that desire to help, that desire to think about your neighbour and to show activism within your community, if that could stay with us, that would be brilliant. And I think it can. I think that in terms of our politics, I think generally speaking, I think that you look at Parliament during Brexit debates, it was an incredibly divided place. You couldn't really get MPs to agree on anything. I think it is better at the moment. I think generally MP to MP, I think and I think the Labour Party have been, I think Jonathan Ashworth as Shadow Health Secretary has been very responsible in the way that he's behaved. I think Keir Starmer's been a little bit disappointing over the last week with some of the things that he said. I think the media have been, I know this is, will stand positive, but I personally think the media's behaviour has been, as a collective, I think it's been quite disgraceful actually over a few weeks. And I think in so many different respects, I think that and there is such a disconnect between where the public are and public opinion and the media. There is such a disconnect. And I mean, even these headlines I keep on seeing saying, social distancing is going to go on for a year or 2 years or 3 years. And you actually read the story, and what it says is there might have to be some form of distancing for some members of the community for a while. It's not saying, full lockdown for 2 years, but the headline will be very much, and that stuff gets shared around on social media. I'm only thinking about the mental health implications of this lockdown. For many of us at the moment, it's not an easy time. And that kind of negativity, and I just think it's irresponsible journalism. And then in addition to that, we have the way in which they're just, yes, clearly the media have got a role in holding the government to account. Clearly they do. And they need to do that. And, there will be things that the government haven't got 100% right over the last few weeks and may not get right over the next few weeks. But the challenges the government facing at the moment are absolutely unprecedented. They will not get everything right. But it does frustrate me slightly when I see, these questions, could we have done more to ensure that PPE got to the front line? Have we done the right thing on testing? But, let's be clear on one thing. It wasn't long ago that there is serious concerns that our NHS would be overwhelmed, that we wouldn't have the capacity to be able to deal with this. Well, I really, I hope I'm not wrong, but at the moment it is looking like our NHS will not be overwhelmed. And actually, we have more spare capacity now within the NHS than we have done at any point. And, the work and I think the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, I think has been very good over the last few weeks, and I think there's a lot the government should take credit for as well. So I think how will politics change? I think society will hopefully change in a positive way, and I think that the people will demand change from their politicians to reciprocate that. I think, but ultimately, I think probably a few months after this, we will go back to having a bit of a bickering and. With the Labour Party, and that will always be the case. And I've got a few questions about Keir Starmer and and etc. And those questions will be raised at the appropriate time in future.
Indeed, raring to get back into adversarial politics there. Yeah, no, I that's very interesting what you say, Tom, and clearly Andrew agrees. This whole point about a disconnect between what the public are thinking and what journalists are doing, and I think it's thrown a really sharp light on press practices. Sensationalism for the sake of it. I mean, there's nothing more useless right now than a political journalist. A scientific journalist, yeah, absolutely. A data scientist, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's hear all these competing. We really don't need any chat about what's going on in the Westminster bubble right now. But yeah, I mean, this practice that's been going on for years, and more people are aware of it. The total disconnect between a headline and the substance.
Yeah.
Madness. I mean, I for one, it's sort of societal common sense, isn't it? I was always taught all journalists are just trying to over sensationalize, and that's the reason why I've never bought a newspaper in my life.
Yeah.
I think more and more people feel that. I mean, my hope is that more generally with national politics, if you look at what we're doing at the moment, there's a broad consensus. Certainly, I mean, you raised a few points, but I think generally we are at a point where people are trying to be constructive. Certainly a lot more than since 2016. But I really hope that now we're literally solely focusing on politics now, policy. The move away from signalling, which I think turns so many people off politics in general. There you go, I'm rambling. We've got a comment from a chap called Patrick in Kent. He says to Andrew, he wanted to let you know about the mutual aid Facebook group, which has been featured on Kent Live. There you go. So Patrick Timms, I don't know if you know him or he's famous in the Kent area, but he's talking about community help that he has seen.
Fabulous.
Yeah, very good times. Right, what's up next? Got another question here, which is, what's your view on? I suppose there's two parts to this. So what's your view on how conservative associations can get best plug in and help their community? And also what good examples have you seen of associations doing this? Not necessarily as associations, but as groups of people who are helping their communities. Tom, over to you first.
I think firstly, there's also, so Vote Source. I think Vote Source. I only found this out, but it has people's ages. It has most people have their date of births on it. So you can if you are concerned about elderly people who are those that say, for example, over the age of 70, most of whom are going to be self-isolating. If you are concerned about them, then Vote Source will enable you to figure out where they live and how you can contact them. So that would be a way of using a political resource in a non-political way to figure out where the people are, where they live, who potentially right now will be needing support the most. So that might be something to consider. I think in terms of associations, most associations and members of, it depends where you are, but 300, 400 members, they're great organisations to. So I'd sort of, try and fundraise as an association for various causes. I think it's a lot of the holes have now been plugged, but I know that till 3 weeks ago, a lot of food banks had certain shortages of certain items. Well, I think if as an association, there was an issue with your local food bank having a shortage of pasta or tinned fruit, then you could send an email around an association and collectively you could all do quite a lot to plug that hole in your local food bank. So I think using the association, using the email list, using the database to try and communicate the key issues and challenges in your local area that you can work together on overcoming. But obviously Vote Source, it does have that information about if you help specifically in terms of the elderly, what we can do to help the elderly. It does allow us to figure out where a lot of them live, so we can directly communicate them in that way.
Cool. Andrew, over to you.
Yeah, I agree with Tom. I mean, we've used Vote Source data, probably not wholly complied with GDPR, but I really don't care at the moment. I think there's a greater need than bureaucracy. But we've written to everybody who is over 70, pointing them in the direction of what is available in terms of local government hubs, the free meal service we're running, work that the local MPs are doing. We've used our database of 7,000 email addresses to send out regular bulletins from the Member of Parliament to people, telling them what they're doing and what services they can provide and how they can contact them. Apart from what I'm doing in my patch, we've got 2 Conservative councillors here in Tunbridge who've set up what's called the community fridge, which is a link between supermarkets who have out-of-date food, but still within the use-by date, but after the sell-by date. This is a non-for-profit organisation which is delivering food which supermarkets no longer want to sell, and giving it away or selling it in the community at a fraction of the price. 2 of my colleagues have set up these community fridges, and they're feeding 200 or 300 people a week. I think increasingly we need to see ourselves. One thing that's really amused me, it's 7 weeks now since I've been to a council meeting, and nothing has changed. Going to be today, nothing has changed. And it does make one wonder, if we never went to another council meeting again, would it make any difference whatsoever?
You're articulating all of our worst fears, Andrew.
Well, you know, the bins get emptied, the council tax gets collected, nothing changes. So I think this is another example of how councillors should see themselves as community activists with access and the confidence to make a difference, rather than people who turn up at every council meeting and think they're very important.
I'm looking outraged there.
I've got to head off in 2 minutes because, you know, it's
Yeah, Tom has great affairs of state to attend to. We're very, very grateful for you dropping in, Tom. It's been great on a personal level. It's great to have a chat with you. Great to see you.
Yeah.
And glad to hear you're fully stuck in and helping the constituents that you represent. So well done, mate. And all the best, right?
Cheers. All right. See you guys.
Cheers, Tom. Bye-bye.
Which leaves you and me, Andrew.
Just the 2 of us. How are you, Tom? I just thought of a funny joke, actually. My father was in the Grenadier Guards, and he was a piper. So I realised we actually had Tom and the Piper's son, but there you go.
That's a real laugh. That's what a real laugh looks like, guys.
Is that a real laugh? It's like your fake. It's like your fake laugh, Tom. It's very hard to tell the difference.
Awesome stuff. I think so. We've got one more question, which is quite abstract. I've just lost it because I've got various places that I'm. Here we go. Right. So we have a question from young Luke, who says, the short-term economic impact is quite severe. How do you think we can help to get businesses which are small, local businesses, back on track in the sort of coming weeks and months? So how best to help local businesses?
Well, I think we need to just accept now that, in the difficult times, it was the local businesses who often were coping better than the big chains. So I think when this is over, if we can afford to, we should start shopping locally again. We should start supporting those local community businesses that stayed open and supported us, supporting those local restaurants who have provided meals for health service workers, and perhaps just going back to a time when we supported our local community shops. I just heard Gerald Lyons on Radio 4 before we started this broadcast, and he was talking about a traffic light change of when we started coming out of lockdown. And he said, the local shops, the local businesses, small traders, should be allowed to open first, so they can re-establish their marketplace before we went on to the orange phase of allowing bigger businesses to open. But I do think this has demonstrated clearly the importance of local community. And if we hadn't lost those local village shops and the local post offices, then we may not have had the problems of delivering food and services to communities, particularly rural communities like mine, that we have now, because the shops are all a 45-minute drive away.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. This is something that we've talked about before, and I think a lot of people are talking about. Will there be a long-term or a medium-term change in people's behaviour? Maybe there will, maybe there won't. Time will tell. But you would certainly.
I hope there is. I hope there is, because I actually I'm actually quite liking this kind of gentler society. I think it's. neighbours helping each other. Even on the roads, drivers are friendlier.
Yeah.
Things have changed. I have a horrible feeling it'll probably last a couple of months, and then we'll all go back to the avaricious lifestyles that we used to have of dining out extravagantly on foie gras and champagne and in top London restaurants. I don't know if you know any of those people, Tom. I suspect it won't be long before, but there may be some lessons, and even if through osmosis, 10% of what we've learned the last few weeks absorbs into our life, then that will be a change for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
the other thing I'd just like to say is what I found every night I'm delivering meals to people is it's something that Tracy Crouch, one of my MPs, talks about. And I don't think people like us often accept us because we are fairly gregarious and we've got strong friendship groups. And that's how lonely many old people are. Even before the lockdown. I meet old people now who don't see anybody, even in a normal time, from 1 week to the next. And now they've all got to know me, because I've been delivering their food now for the best part of the month. They've got wonderful stories to tell and great experience to share, even at a 3 metre distance. They want to engage in conversation. But there is an awful lot of loneliness out there that is hidden away. Behind lace curtains of smart bungalows and nice villages, and that's something we do need to address. Is how we bring those fabulous people, many of whom have got great life stories, and how we bring those people back into active society to share their experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said people should spend more time talking to older people. They've grown up in a much more interesting time. I mean, I've lived through the fall of the Berlin Wall and September the 11th, but they've lived through much, much more interesting times and had much more life experience, much, much, much broader, certainly, than clicking on things and ordering, getting everything done via an app and clicking a few buttons.
That's right.
And they've got a lot to say. We should listen to them. That's the whole purpose of society, isn't it? But there we are. What a profound note to end on, Andrew. And thank you very much for joining us. And
thank you, Tom.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. Thanks very much to Andrew. Thank you to Tom. Thank you to everyone who tuned in live. And hopefully this will be edited and put up online. So thank you to everyone who's tuning in on demand as well. All right. Ciao for now, everybody.
Bye.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.